Picture this. It's December 21st, 2012, a day many believed might be the literal end of the world. The Mayan calendar was set to expire, countless conspiracy theories were spreading like wildfire across the internet, and people were unsure what a new era might bring. Some treated it as a joke, others fell into a deep paranoia. But nobody, not presidents, not generals, not journalists, could have predicted the scale of what was about to unfold. This video will take you on a journey through a dramatic, yet historically plausible, alternate timeline, a world where the 2012 Doomsday event did happen. We will piece together a rich story of upheaval, transformation, and renewal. We'll move forward through the years immediately after the catastrophe, into the medium term, a period of trial and rebirth, and then all the way into the distant future, reflecting on how much the world has changed. In our timeline, December 23rd, 2012 came and went without incident. The Mayan calendar, which many believed predicted the end of the world, simply turned over to a new epoch, much like we change a calendar at the start of a new year. The panic and media sensationalism fell flat, and the day blended back into ordinary life. The years following 2012 were marked by ongoing political disputes, climate change anxieties, the rise of smartphones and social media, and a growing awareness that we were entering a new era defined by technology and a shifting world order. The Cold War was a distant memory. Terrorism remained a persistent, if manageable, threat. And the greatest upheavals were related to economics and climate policy, not literal destruction from the heavens or the earth. In this alternate timeline, December 21st, 2012 wasn't a false alarm. It was the day everything fell apart. As midnight struck across the Pacific Islands and then the rest of the world fell into 21st December, a massive asteroid, previously undetected due to a combination of observational blind spots and faulty data, entered Earth's atmosphere at a shallow angle. Measuring nearly 2.5 kilometers across and composed of dense metal-rich material, this asteroid, later called Calamitas, struck the Pacific Ocean roughly 1,000 kilometers west of Chile. The shock of the impact was unimaginable. The asteroid struck with the force of 1,000 Tsar Bomba blasts. The resulting shockwave and tsunami erased coastal communities across South America and many islands in the Pacific, sending a wall of water nearly 30 meters high against Chile, Peru, Ecuador, and even threatening the west coasts of North America and Australia. The initial blast alone instantly killed an estimated 2 to 3 million people, and the subsequent upheaval, earthquakes, wildfires, power outages, raised the death toll to nearly 10 million within days. A huge amount of water and debris was hurled into the upper atmosphere, forming a thick blanket of dust and ash. Scientists called it a planetary umbrella, a massive particulate barrier that dampened solar radiation, causing a dramatic drop in temperatures across the globe. Within weeks, agricultural production fell, power stations failed, food distribution networks broke down, and many societies fell into chaos. The first few years after Calamitas struck were a time of pure upheaval. The Pacific's coastal infrastructure was gone. Many major port cities, Valparaiso, Guayaquil, Callao, were erased. Large segments of South America fell into a humanitarian crisis, prompting a massive international aid effort. The USA, European Union, and a newly formed Pacific Relief Council rushed food, water, and medical aid into the affected regions. Meanwhile, the climate cooled nearly 2 degrees on average. The phenomenon, called impact winter, disrupted growing seasons across North America, Europe, and Asia. Harvests failed, food prices skyrocketed, and many developing and poor countries fell into famine and civil strife. The crisis forced a dramatic reordering of international politics. Food, not oil, became the most valuable commodity. Some governments fell under the pressure. Pakistan, North Korea, and several North Africa regimes were destabilized by food riots and refugee movements. The European Union called for unity and solidarity, but internal divisions made policy responses slow and messy. The USA, meanwhile, turned inward, focusing resources on protecting its own agricultural base and securing food and freshwater supplies. This period also saw the rise of climate refugees. Tens of millions crossed borders in search of food, stability, and a future, putting huge pressure on already fragile political institutions. The shock to the world's financial markets was immense. The London and New York stock exchanges fell more than 60% in the first 2 years, and many industries, tourism, luxury goods, international travel, all but collapsed. As the dust from the asteroid slowly fell and the climate began to stabilize, the world entered a period of painful renewal. Between 2017 and 2032, many societies transitioned from pure crisis management into a slow process of rebuilding. The food scarcity that defined the first few years after 2012 gradually eased thanks to innovations in agricultural technology, such as vertical farming, synthetic proteins, and hardy GM crops, which were rushed into production to match growing needs. This era was marked by political upheaval and the rise of new powers. Regional organizations filled the void left by weakening states. For example, the Pacific Relief Council evolved into a permanent Pacific Union, a political and economic alliance aimed at securing resources and stability for the Pacific Rim. The European Union, meanwhile, fell into a deep political crisis and was forced to reform, extending greater powers to its central institutions in order to respond to future emergencies. The USA remained a dominant power, but it was more inward-looking and protective of its resources. China and India, less directly affected by the asteroid EES initial shock, were able to consolidate their influence in Asia and Africa by sending aid, expertise, and financing to rebuilding states. Beijing's Silk Road 2.0 policy transformed from an infrastructure venture into a massive humanitarian and agricultural renewal effort. Delhi leveraged its agricultural expertise to become a key supplier of food and technology to hard-hit regions, strengthening its diplomatic relationships in Southeast Asia and Africa. Meanwhile, international organizations like the United Nations were forced to reform their missions and structures. Climate, food, and refugee crises demanded a more powerful, multilateral approach to policy. A dramatic expansion of the roles of organizations like the FAO, WFP, and UNHCR. A Global Disaster Council was created under the UN's umbrella to respond quickly to future emergencies. By 2040 and onwards, the world had entered a new era, a post-cataclysm order defined by scarcity, resiliency, and adaptability. The climate remained about C below pre-impact levels, which meant growing seasons were shorter and less reliable. Freshwater resources were under stress, and agricultural production remained vulnerable to fluctuations. This forced a dramatic re-engineering of human settlements and food production. Cities were designed to be more compact and energy efficient. Many were fortified against future disasters, with flood defenses, underground food storage, and decentralized power and water systems. Large-scale desalination and water recycling programs became a necessity in many coastal regions. International politics were profoundly influenced by the legacy of the asteroid. Cooperation and multilateral institutions remained strong. There was a deep understanding that future survival depended on unity and collaboration. The Pacific Union, the revamped European Union, and organizations like the Global Disaster Council formed a framework for international policy and aid distribution. Meanwhile, the power structure shifted away from a few dominant powers toward a more multipolar world. The USA remained a key actor, but was no longer a sole superpower. The rise of Pacific and South Asian powers made the international scene more balanced and more prone to diplomatic competition. Today, nearly 35 years after the asteroid struck, the world is a profoundly different place. The shock of 2012 forced us to rethink nearly everything about how we produce food, generate energy, govern ourselves, and relate to the environment. The years of scarcity and upheaval challenged long-standing political structures and forced societies to become more adaptable, more cooperative, and more forward-thinking. The most visible change is in our cities and agricultural landscapes. Rising from the ruins, many coastal metropolitan areas were redesigned to be more resilient, featuring elevated structures, extensive flood defenses, and decentralized power and water systems. Cities like Santiago, Los Angeles, and Auckland have become models for resilient city planning, combining technology, ecological design, and communal resources. Meanwhile, agricultural production has shifted toward a mixture of large, climate-controlled facilities and small, distributed rooftop and community farms. Vertical farming and biotechnology companies, supported by government incentives and international organizations, produce much of the world's food, reducing reliance on traditional agricultural land. Climate-smart practices, soil regeneration, and closed-loop water and nutrient systems have become standard. International politics reflect this dramatic transformation. The Pacific Union plays a key role in policy coordination across the Pacific Rim. The European Union, after extensive reform, has become a powerful federal entity, and the USA, while still strong, finds its influence more diffuse in a multipolar world. There's greater collaboration on climate policy, food distribution, and refugee relocation, a legacy of the upheavals that forced unity over division. The era of scarcity has fostered a new culture of adaptability. Sustainable technology, civic preparedness, education, and collaboration are valued more than pure economic growth. The world's political institutions, businesses, and communities are all geared toward mitigating future risks, from asteroid impacts and climate change to food scarcity and water wars, in a way that simply wasn't true before 2012. Michelle Bachelet, originally a center-left politician who led Chile through a period of economic growth and education reform, Bachelet's role in the alternate timeline was profoundly different. The asteroid struck Chile's Pacific coastline directly, causing catastrophic damage and upheaval. Rising to the crisis, Bachelet became a wartime leader, organizing massive relief and relocation efforts and securing international aid. Her decisive actions not only kept Chile from descending into chaos, but also made her a symbol of unity and resolve. Eventually, she transitioned into a global stateswoman, helping to form the Pacific Union and shaping policy on climate resiliency and food distribution across the Pacific. Xi Jinping, originally a leader who presided over China's rise to power through economics and diplomacy, Xi's legacy in this timeline is defined by his ability to respond to the 2012 crisis. His government provided extensive aid and agricultural expertise to many affected regions, a form of food diplomacy, which enhanced Beijing's influence across Southeast Asia and Africa. His legacy is a dramatic expansion of Chinese soft power and a key role in developing a multilateral framework to handle future disasters, a legacy quite different from the assertive, sometimes aggressive policy path we know in our timeline. Joe Biden's trajectory was profoundly influenced by the crisis. His first term, in this timeline, was defined by domestic preparedness and recovery. His administration implemented large-scale food programs, fortified coastal infrastructure, and supported a federal transformation toward renewable energy and water conservation. His diplomatic policy shifted from interventionism to collaboration, reflecting a newfound understanding that climate and food security were the greatest non-military threats to U.S. stability and prosperity. His legacy is a more pragmatic, less ambitious USA, a power less obsessed with domination and more concerned with protecting its own future.